Thank you very much. From gold to fertilizer in one easy step. I'm going to start by just asking a question. Why would one of the most respected businessmen in South Africa, CEO of a FTSE 100 company, 4 months ago, take the chairmanship of a small, listed Australian potash company, when he'd been offered chairmanships of companies over 100 times the size? Why did I leave a career in banking to join that company? Especially at a time when commodities are so weak. Why did we join a slightly unloved company? Because it was unique and had a unique opportunity. First of all, we like the sector. It's not your typical commodity. It's driven by agricultural dynamics. Secondly, it's a company that everyone accepted had a world-class deposit. It also had the potential to have the lowest OPEX of any potash mine in the world. And we finally had a strategy that could take it not just through to construction, but to production. Where do I point this? Oh, yeah. What is potash? Well, potash is principally a fertilizer. It's one of the 3 nutrients that's needed to grow things. And the demand for potash is directly correlated to the demand for food. And we know what's happening to the demand for food. So who is Elemental Minerals? We're an Australian listed company based in the Republic of Congo, not the DRC, the Republic of Congo, and we have 3 principal areas of deposit. We've got Kola, which is very high grade KCl, 33% compared to an industry of roughly 20 to 22. It's very shallow, and it's got nearly 600 million tonnes of measured and indicated. We've got a carnallite deposit in Dugu, which is huge, 1.1 billion tonnes. Of relatively high grade. And we've got a very exciting opportunity at Yangala, which, if it proves out, will be one of the highest grade KCl in the world. So what's recently changed for us? Why have we moved from being just what I would call a normal junior mining company into something that is a genuine contender? We received a proposal by a summit-led group of investors, which completely takes the business forward. Not only does this proposal look at investing 50 million, at least 50 million in the business, which will allow us to finish the DFS, potentially do the PFS on Dugu, increase the mine's capacity from 1 million to 2 million, but it also brings in other aspects. It brings in a group of investors that can take us through to construction. It can bring in a group of investors that can take us through to production. It also brings in a group of world-class specialists, French specialists, that are construction companies and engineering companies that can help us do the DFS, and then within 3 months provide us with a fixed EPC. What does that mean to us? That means that we accelerate construction by between 12 and 24 months. You can calculate the NPV uplift of something like that. But quite a few people say, well, fixed EPC are rarely fixed. We've specifically designed this around the fact that the people who are doing the construction are the same companies that are doing the design. That de-risks it hugely from our perspective and gives me comfort that I know what it's going to cost to build this mine. I've set out here a few strengths and weaknesses. I'm not going to focus on the strengths. I'll come to some of those later on. But I want to pick up a couple of the weaknesses that have been presented to me since I've taken over 4 months ago. The macro environment. Yeah, it is difficult, but I remain excited. Why do I remain excited? Our driver isn't the same as everyone else, as I've mentioned before. It's driven by agriculture. and agricultural demand remains strong and is expected to remain strong into the foreseeable future. If you're in a cyclical industry, you have to be at the far left hand of the cost curve, the cheapest end of the cost curve, and we simply are that. I'll show you in a second. And while it's not a great time for some of the producers, it's a great time to be constructing. Costs are at an all-time low. So although there are various different weaknesses in the environment, I remain pretty positive about it. Country risk. It's in the Republic of Congo. When I joined, I went up to the Congo. I sat with CEOs who have businesses there. International companies have the businesses there. I sat with the French consulate. I sat with ministers and I sat with DGs of the various different departments. And what I came away with was a very, very clear message. The Republic of Congo is a very sensible place to be doing business and has been a very sensible place to be doing business for over 30 years. Yes, at times it's a little bit slow, but you name an emerging market that isn't.
It's also pretty slow in the Yukon sometimes.
The potash market. It's driven by different things, I've mentioned that. It's driven by population growth. It's driven by the fact that agricultural land is reducing and continues to reduce. It's driven by the fact that food requirements continue to go up, and not just for humans, but also for animals. And this demand isn't just based on Chinese growth. It's based on worldwide growth. So I remain excited about the long-term prospects. You can see that here. This is the forecast for K2O growth over the next 15 years, which is projected to grow by 60%. One of the concerns is the fact that at present supply exceeds demand. And I agree, it does. But what are you seeing with a slightly weaker potash market is you're seeing some of the capacity coming out of the market. This is good for a company like ELM that is still in the construction phase. You've seen recently Piccadilly shutting, Brunswick shutting, and BHP potentially switching off Jansen. What existing producers are doing is trying to move away from high OPEX mines into low OPEX mines. This strengthens the point that you need to be on the low end of the OPEX curve if you're going to survive, which we are. Just to give you a flavour of how big the resource is compared to other potential mines, we're at the right-hand end of the curve. What does that mean? That means that although our short-term goal is to produce 2 million tonnes, in the medium term 5 million tonnes is not a problem, and potentially up to 10 million tonnes. Why do I keep saying that we're the lowest OPEX? It's very simple. We're a shallow mine. We're about 200 to 300 metres. It's not unusual for a potash mine to be over a kilometre deep. We're close to a port. We can have a very simple conveyor belt that takes it from the mine to the port, whereas a lot of potash mines are over 1,000 kilometres from the port. That makes a huge difference. We're immensely high grade, 33% KCl. And interestingly, which is not often common in Africa, we've got an abundance of the utilities. There is excess electricity in the area, there is excess gas in the area, and we have no problem as far as water is concerned. Just to show you quite how far to the left we are, we sit down on the, I'm not even going to try and far left-hand curve, significantly below almost every other mine, potash mine in the world at the moment. But this chart tells you another thing. What it tells you is that almost 45% of the industry is above $200 per tonne. We're at less than $100 per tonne, or will be less than $100 per tonne. That provides a huge amount of support to the price. What it means is that should the potash price fall to 200 from where it is at the moment, we'll still be making $100 per tonne. We're going to have a 2 million tonne mine, will be making $200 million of EBITDA when most of the industry is at break-even point. That's still a 10% EBITDA return on capital. Our costs at the moment are based on our 2012 PFS, which estimated the mine would cost $1.85 billion to build. It's roughly in the middle of the pack per tonne, capex per tonne. But it was designed in 2012 when things were slightly better. We've looked at this and we expect to be able to reduce the capex significantly to the left. I mentioned the ROC. There's one big thing that investors can get comfort from. In the ROC, they have what's called a mining convention. So new mining operations enter an agreement with the government that sets out how the government and how the company are going to operate together. It sets out the tax rules for the life of the mine. It sets out the customs. It sets out the banking operations, what you can bring in, what you can't bring in. It's not just an any old ordinary agreement. This is then approved by the cabinet, and then it's ratified and put into law. And this lasts for the life of the mine. It gives investors a huge amount of comfort as to the operating environment that we're going to be working in. So, by way of conclusion, if we're correct that this is one of the lowest OPEX mines in the world, and if I can close the transaction with a potential summit-led group of investors that will back this business not just through to construction but through to production, if we have a set of construction experts and engineers that can de-risk the building for me of this mine and provide me with a fixed cost that I think they can adhere to in a country that they know incredibly well and have been operating in for over 50 years. And if I have governmental support that I can rely on, then this has to be a fantastic opportunity for investors. And that's why a FTSE 100 company CEO became chairman of this company, and that's why I gave up my banking career to run this company. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for this very good presentation. We have time for a question or two. Gentleman in the back.
Offtake, how far are you in terms of getting up to the agreement? You could raise this on your list. Have you gone beyond the general discussion?
I have gone beyond general discussions. I'm at reasonably advanced stage of discussions with a variety of people. I can't say much more than that because I haven't sort of spoken to the market about it yet, but let's just say offtake at the moment is looking very strong. Offtake demand is looking very strong.
Over there on the back.
You said you're expecting basically some cost reductions now relative to the 2012 PFS. Around what kind of percentages do you expect to achieve?
Well, as my chief engineer and my CEO keep saying to me, Sean, I can't guarantee anything until we finish the DFS, which I think is probably fair. But let me give you an indication. In the PFS, which was done pretty well to DFS standard, I think my predecessors spent something approaching $60 or $70 million on the PFS. In that, we had, for instance, the camp build, which was done for $70 million. Now, I've spoken to other CEOs who are running mines. They don't spend $70 million on a camp. They don't need a golf course, for instance. In 2012, people would build golf courses. They sure as, I was going to say hell, don't build those now. So I expect significant reductions. What should that be? It could be somewhere between 30 and 40. I don't expect the cost to come down by half, but I do expect some significant savings. And every bit of saving that we get will go into the hands of the equity shareholders.
Gentleman on the right.
Yeah. Just a question. I don't know if there is for you or for the leaflets. If I see the average volume of the 3 months, you have an average volume of 88.71 million thousands, or there is only 8,900 shares on the market for you.
Well, that's a good question. Somebody's really interested.
If there is wrong, I mean, you have to correct it. If there is correct,
What was the final number that it says in there? Sorry?
88,71 without indication.
It's probably only 1,000 actually. Most of our trading at the moment is by sort of small family shareholders in Australia. I mean, that's going to change over time because obviously we're doing the fundraise. Our need for capital is going to increase.
There is 88,000 shares on Freeman's. 88,000.
No, that'll be per day. Let me take a look at that. Without seeing it, it's rather difficult for me to comment on it. I'll need to sort of take a look. I can do that afterwards.
Okay, very well. One last question in the first row.
How can you assess the competition from the large rebel producers, somewhat referring to the large Russian producers like Potash, Alkali, etc., in the specific market?
The question relates to competition.
Yes.
Well, part of the strategy at the moment is to get the right investors behind me. And hopefully in the next few weeks you'll be able to sort of get more detail around that. I need to be careful because at the end of the day, I don't focus on my competition. What I focus on is getting this project into a fundable state, so making sure that it is the lowest OPEX. Because in that, you can compete in any market. I don't want to go into a cyclical market with high OPEX costs, because at some stage, you'll lose. If we're lower than everybody else in the market, there's not much that our competitors can do about it. One of the things that concerns me sometimes is the level of supply. But what I've seen since I've joined this company, supply is coming back. It's actually quite good timing for us, because don't forget, we won't actually be producing for another 5 years. So having a relatively weak market now is not necessarily a bad thing. But I don't spend my time looking at the competitors, I spend my time looking at getting our business into completely the right shape.
Okay, well, thank you very much for this great presentation. I think we can give this
you.
gentleman a big round of applause.